I'm also in the Army National Guard, and I was the captain in the National Guard, and I was doing my change of command inventory, and it was brought to my attention by one of my sergeants that the towers were going down. All my friends and family, I grew up in New York City, went to aviation high school, worked for the New York City Police Department, so had very big concerns. My cousins, the Abrazinos, we all call each other cousins for family, but me and Joey grew up since we were little kids, and him and his two brothers, Billy and Tony, were firefighters, so I had concerns because many of my friends were blue-collar workers, and they either worked for the FDNY or NYPD. And on that day, I made some phone calls, and it was unfortunate to find out within the 24 hours, one of our very close friends and a family member, Joan Abrazino's husband, Raymond York, who was also on the wall, was actually on duty that day. He was on light duty, and he didn't have to respond, and he responded. And we found out that one of the towers had collapsed on him during the rescue. So that was very near and dear and close to our hearts. And it was a lot of emotional things going on. I remember when those towers went up. My dad was a union worker in New York City. He was a carpenter, so I helped him on the 44th floor. We actually installed flooring and carpet in there. And I remember being a kid and taking the elevator up and down one of the towers, 44 floors at a time. You think emptying the trash and going out the back door, but every time we had to clean up, you had to go up and down the elevator. So I remember being a rookie cop in the Transit Bureau and spinning my baton and learning how to spin a baton downtown there under the towers, because downtown district is always quiet at night. So I think it had a big impact, not just on New Yorkers that day, but on our country. And I think any native New Yorker, even down here in Alabama in the South, as you see today, we remember all those that lost their lives, and just not at the towers, but at the Pentagon and in the field in Pennsylvania. So it was a very hard hit that day, and very memorable. And one of the biggest things that I was honored with was during that time period, we do host a bomb squad at Redstone Arsenal. The NYPD officers came down here, and during the ceremony when it was held in the park at night, they presented the current mayor, at that time was Loretta Spencer, a plaque with the steel from the 911 towers, and it still sits in the hallway here at the Fire Station 1 in remembrance of that day. And that was a great honor that they wanted to present something to the city for being so hospitable to them, especially with the school and how we treated them and how our community treated them here as New Yorkers. And during that time, they wore their dress uniform, and they felt very humbled on how they were treated that day. So in remembrance of how they were treated here, they gave a token of appreciation to the city of Huntsville, which still sits till this day in the hall of Station 1.
You obviously have a very personal connection to 9/11. What, obviously when the first towers were hit, it really shocked the world, but we never really thought that the second towers would be hit. What kind of was going through your mind as the first one was hit, then the second one, and then you just see them fall?
I never thought, because of the structure, and if they were always overwhelming, that they would go down. And when it was brought to my attention, we thought right away we were under attack. I guess, we honor our World War II veterans and remember how Pearl Harbor was. That's the first thing that struck in my mind, was that we had a surprise attack, and we didn't know what the chain of effects were going to be, because there was a second and third order effect. So once the towers were on fire and we seen the second tower being struck, and most of us watched, in shock. It was just overwhelming. I'll never forget the day watching them. I was standing in that classroom right on Johnson Road in the Armory, and I was in my military uniform because I was doing an inventory for a change of command. I was becoming a battery commander. I immediately knew that there was a dual role here. Could we be activated military-wise? And I actually had my patrol car parked outside, and I went off orders right away, changed into my uniform, responded to the precinct, and at that point we started thinking of setting up security to protect our city. And I remember the chief of police at the time having us setting up at very targeted areas. We were setting up at the federal courthouse. I remember I was set up at the Space and Rocket Center because of everything that's going on there. And we at that time got into a mode of defending our nation and deciding that we are currently now at war, that we knew we were under attack that day. And that's the first thing that hit me is, You know, we went without war for so many years, decades, and this chain of effects changed all of our lives till this day. Our travel, how we travel at airports, how diligent we have to be, cyber, and all the different type of attacks that we could go under. But unfortunately, since 9/11, we've seen other events that have occurred, you know, nationally. In Boston at the marathon, the subway attacks that occurred in London. So unfortunately, this type of incident caused a chain of reaction for terrorists, and it's changed the way we have to live our lives every day. And for those that have fallen, we have to remember them always. And I'm appreciative nationally on how we remember all these fallen, and not just the public safety, our citizens. You know, we had many citizens in that building that day, those buildings and those areas that were saving lives and took a step forward and showed themselves to be true Americans. And when we honor them today too. So we always honor our public safety people, but I never want to forget the other people, just good American citizens of all races, colors, religions, creeds, stepped up that day and became one. And if you ever watch the footage from that, you'll see on that day we were one thing. We were Americans, you know, and we stood together.